Good morning. Thank you so much, Chantal. It's really an honor to be with you to facilitate this important discussion on unity in our tech ecosystem, something I am incredibly passionate about. We love having you all here in Canada's capital. So welcome to friends, partners, and neighbors who are joining us from across the country, and to all those who work hard here every single day in Ottawa to build up our entrepreneurship ecosystem, our global tech hub. At Invest Ottawa, we have never seen so many founders come to us seeking that support and the opportunity to grow great companies here in the capital and in Canada, and we do all of that together. So thank you so much. And it really is a great segue into the collaboration that we know is at the heart of everything we need to do to succeed. I want to extend sincere congratulations to Claudio, to Safina, to Chantal, and the entire NACO team on the summit. It's been such a great pleasure to collaborate with you, and the community you have assembled here today is incredible. It's a community of amazing founders and entrepreneurs who are changing the world, an ecosystem where founders truly help founders, where investors are many former founders themselves and are fueling that investment. They're champions for those entrepreneurs and recycling the capital right back into our ecosystem to build those great companies, and that's an impact we know we need to preserve. That's a key focus for today's panel. I'm inspired by the collaboration I see across the country, locally here in Ottawa, whether it's with the Capital Angel Network, all of our Sheboot founders across the province, the regional innovation centers across the country, Canada's Tech Network, events and organizations like NACO and CVCA. We have so much to build upon. And we're not just building great companies, we're building our economy, we're building our future, and we're doing it together. Throughout the conference, you've already heard so many of the mission-critical challenges that we know we're facing, from productivity to the state of our business environment, and it is only through collaboration that we will address those challenges. And at this moment in time, I believe unity has never been more important, that we come together with intention, combine our greatest strengths and resources, diverse expertise, ideas, and people with critical mass. It's the only way we will do it in Canada to deliver solutions, to help those founders grow and build great companies today and decades from now. No one leader, no one organization, no one country, no one region has all of the resources or the horsepower to achieve the type of outcomes that we need to do in this moment in time. And like Allison and so many of their speakers, I believe the greatest opportunities and potential is at those intersections. Those big wins and big opportunities are the mashup of multidisciplinary, multi-sectoral, every type of individual and expertise from every walk of life. And I know everyone in this room is dedicated to achieving that goal. And the visionary leaders to my left brought to bear their vision and are bringing that very impact on our community. So I would like to thank you both and invite you both to share a little bit about yourselves, the organizations that you lead, and why you have chosen to make the investment and collaboration that you have for Canada. Start with Phil.
Start with me. Age over beauty, apparently. So hello, everybody. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. What can I say? Startupfest. Has anybody heard of Startupfest? Yeah? So, I mean, the question is, why did we do this? Why do we continue to do this?
Why did you bring
It was a crazy idea, really. I never set out to run events, to be honest. In the beginning, it was, can I amass a room of 50 people to get together and have a conversation? And that 50 people became 150, 350, eventually 7,000, and here we are today, 14 years later. So it's not, there's nothing purpose-built about it, very natural, very sort of go with the flow. It's my story.
Amazing. Lisa, welcome.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sonya, for hosting this panel, Claudio for inviting us out. Phil, I have to say, we're on the stage. Like, we're usually behind the stage, so this is very new for us, and it's exciting and fun. I'm Lisa. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Elevate. Previous to Elevate, I was at Mars for a number of years, building out some marquee events and programs for entrepreneurs there. And I remember one day, June 2017, my boss at the time, Salim Taja, tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "Why don't you come to a meeting with me?" And I walked into this meeting and there were several leaders of Toronto's tech ecosystem. And they were all talking about this idea of, what if we took everything that we were building alone in a silo, and what if we pulled it all together and we built something bigger than anyone's ever seen before? And what if we gave a platform to inspire and share the stories of Canadian innovators on a global stage? And what if we stopped being so humble as Canadians and we actually were proud of our tech and innovation ecosystem? And I just remember I fell in love with the idea, I fell in love with the concept, and I have been with Elevate ever since. And so from 2017 to 2019, we grew the event in Toronto, 3 amazing years. We all have our COVID stories. Being in the large-scale live events industry during COVID is not a great industry to be in. But we continued to find other ways to build that community, and I think that's a big part of the discussion today. And we're proud to be back in market with a big festival and several other events to try to support founders, investors, and our ecosystem today.
It's amazing, and you both are such visionary community builders, and you've made that investment over many years. You also have a very unique perspective because you are on the ground working with so many different people, founders, investors. We've talked a lot about the challenges all morning and through the national dialogue and the discourse that's happening in this country. What are each of you seeing on the ground in your communities, particularly as you're building up to the next series of events that you'll be launching this year?
Phil?
Yeah, what are we seeing in the market? I think like everybody, we're seeing a lot of pressure, downwards. There's not, this effervescence of excitement, tons of money in the market, lots of entrepreneurs running after, easy money. That's an obvious, I think that's what everybody sees. But, what's always astounded me, it's not the first downturn. We've been doing this for so many years. It's not the first downturn we've lived. And actually, it's these moments where I find that those that are really doing the right things shine. The organizations that continue to thrive and push through the difficulties like COVID, in this case, a downturn in the economy. And also I don't see any, there's maybe less entrepreneurs, but those that are committed to entrepreneurship are committed to entrepreneurship. And I always find that when there's a downturn, people are losing their jobs, they tend to turn towards entrepreneurship because they can create their own reality. So on one hand, I feel this downward pressure, but on the other hand, I'm always very hopeful that entrepreneurship thrives and lives on and never stops. And I have a confidence that the angels and the investors will continue to back great ideas.
Amazing. Lisa?
Quite similar from what we've seen. I think, when we started Elevate, there was such an energy and an enthusiasm in the ecosystem that I don't feel is necessarily there anymore, and I think we all need to do a little bit of work to get that back. I think there tends to be a little bit more negativity today, and a lot of it's fair. It's extremely, extremely challenging times, but I do think the conversations need to be directed towards inspiring more entrepreneurs and building incredible companies here in Canada. I would say the other thing that I have seen, though, that I think has been an extreme positive has been, I think, the opportunity to take a step back and people to think about what does it actually mean to build a more inclusive ecosystem. And a lot of energy is going towards that. One story I'll share from our last festival. We invited this incredible speaker, Vivek Wadhwa, who actually had a conversation with Debbie Gamble on the main stage, who you'll hear from next. An incredible entrepreneur, innovator, future-forward thinker out of Silicon Valley. And he came up to me at the end of the event, and I said, what was your takeaway? What did you enjoy? He said, Lisa, I spent the entire day in your Women in Tech Lounge. And he said, what is in the water in Canada? What are you building here? These conversations are not happening in Silicon Valley. And I took that, I was just so proud of that, and I think we should all be so proud of that.
I have been in that Women in Tech Lounge with so many champions and allies in this room, with Jennifer and Julia and so many across the country. So thank you. Thank you for creating that opportunity. And I guess my follow-up question is, we do face these major challenges. Mars Communitech IO, we just did a survey, so many founders about the business environment and the multitude of challenges, the access to capital, housing, how they help their employees to grow and be able to afford that future in Canada, access to talent. I really believe that the communities and the events that you are leading are creating this beautiful breeding ground for ideas and solutions, and that mashup of all of those great people and ideas and the great founders that we serve. What are some of the other stories that might inspire this audience to be intentional about how they approach the way they collaborate with others?
I think collaboration is so important, and I've seen such great support with Elevate, of so many people coming to the table and just saying, what can I do? How can I help? How can we build this together? And seeing the importance of that, because I think they do recognize the value that it provides in encouraging people who have thought about starting their new thing, but they don't know where to go. They don't know what community looks like. I think that's one of the great things that we're trying to do with the festival is encouraging a new wave of entrepreneurship. I think a lot of our tech community has been a very walled garden up till very recently, and I think it is understanding that entrepreneurs come from every walk of life, and how can we make them feel seen and represented is extremely, extremely important. It was incredible. One quick story I'll share with you. For many years, 2018, we always had this lovely gentleman who owned a number of Tim Hortons franchises. And so they always brought and set up and served coffee at the festival for attendees. And recently, I saw him, we were doing an onboarding for one of our accelerator programs. And he was in our accelerator program. And I said, what are you doing here? And he said, well, I was inspired to start my own company. So I think it's so incredible to get that inspiration. But then also I think with what Phil's building, we're here all the time. We're on the ground. We're in the ecosystem. So if it goes from an event to an accelerator, we're always trying to capture and support founders. It's not just about a one-time event. It's what else can we do?
That community. Phil, we talked yesterday about how you really see some of the impacts. I remember you saying to me, when I see people leaving smiling every single day of Startupfest, that's one of the great takeaways that you leave with.
Yeah,
some of the others?
You asked yesterday, and you're asking again today, for stories, and there's so many is the reality, and it's hard to point to one that I like the most. But I did give it some thought because I figured I wouldn't be on here on stage. For me, it's the magic that happens at events. Sometimes it happens on stage. I don't know if it's going to happen today here with us, but it happens on stage. But often the magic is happening out in the hallways and the connections you're going to make. And for me, when I look back over 14 years, I try and imagine, what are these glorious moments? And it's, seeing Harley Finkelstein as a young 20-some-odd-year-old on a skateboard showing up to Startupfest begging to get on stage, which is not the case now. He likes to be begged at, preferably. But it's seeing people like that go from nothing to something, and seeing Dax da Silva, the first time we put him on stage, we had a nice big room, 800 people, there were 10 people listening to Dax da Silva. And then 10 years later when we put him on stage, it's standing room only, he's signing books, and so it's the magic of the entrepreneur that really turns, gets me excited. It's seeing those pops of people and then following them and allowing them to tell their stories and inspire the others and stuff. And so, there's lots. I could talk about the tornado. That was a pretty exciting moment last year.
Multiple tornadoes.
Yes,
many
we've
tornadoes.
had a few.
Some of the memorable moments we don't need to recreate. Yes.
But yeah, there's so many wonderful stories. People come up to me all the time and they say, oh, the event changed my life. I met my investor, I met my co-founder and stuff like that. We don't track these stories, much to the detriment, or certainly our governments would like us to track these stories more accurately, but we don't, because we don't like to get caught up in trying to prove our value. Like I said on the phone, when people are walking out of the event, I stand at the exit, and if there are smiles on the faces, I know we've done a good job. And so that's what I look for.
You've both been so deeply involved in the tech ecosystem and hearing the stories that span over years. Could you share some of the trends or some of the big changes that you've seen as you ventured through your journey? You're essentially co-founders, of course, as well, that are bringing your vision to bear on Canada. What are some of the biggest changes?
Look, when we started this, the theme of the first event was mobile, right? I mean, it was like, oh, wow, what's mobile? And everybody was rushing at, creating mobile apps. We're a pretty ecosystemic event, very horizontal. We don't focus on any one particular industry. We let the market dictate what's going to be the trend in that year. Somehow, because it's early stage entrepreneurship, we tend to be 6 months, maybe 9 months ahead of the curve. But clearly now it's artificial intelligence, and there's no debating it. There's no, that's what happens. Now 50% of the companies that come to Startupfest, if not more, if they're not in AI, they have an AI story. So that's definitely the trend, and I think that's the biggest opportunities. But there were moments where it was more SaaS focused, or it was more big data, or you name it. I mean, we've gone through hypes over 14 years.
Yeah, I think as we look at different trends, I think, and I don't think this has necessarily changed over time, but I think in terms of event offerings and building community, you need to build for different objectives and purposes. And so what I've been thinking a lot about is, I mean, we've got a great, a big festival, 10,000 people. It's great for reach. It's great for platform. It's great to share those stories. But now I'm also starting to think about smaller circles and how do you also build, really authentic and meaningful smaller circles of people that can help uplift each other. I actually think, Sonya, I think you were part of this. I know what Mars was running with these like women,
yes,
these women breakfasts
leaders'
or
dinners,
evenings,
yes,
was like that to me was such a great, because it was a smaller circle. It still was so inclusive that you could invite people to it, but then you're able to go a level deeper. And so I'm always thinking about like what is the purpose for the event, and how can you achieve it? And I think that's different sizes, different formats, and so we're still kind of playing in that space.
Thank you, Krista Jones, for leading that initiative and for being such a great champion. You're really touching on the different types of relationships and opportunities that can be created, and I want to come back to diversity, equity, and inclusion, something that I know so many in this room are driving for. It's hard sometimes to know how to take those steps, how to know when you're actually driving meaningful change. How do you both gauge that meaningful change when you're taking on this big vision and delivering and building the communities and actually seeing those milestones and that progress?
Yeah, it's been, quite honestly, it's been incredible. We try to be as thoughtful as we can, and this is really where you need the community. This is really when you cannot do anything in isolation. We have to work and be thoughtful with so many community partners to be able to build and generate a space for a multitude of people from different backgrounds. For us, it actually started with evaluating and making sure we had representation on the stages. Was extremely, extremely important for us. And so for like our minimum is it's 50-50. 50% women identified is where we start. And ensuring that we've got different representation. So that was really, really important to us. And over time we've seen that needle shift. From our post-event survey last year, 57% of our attendees identified as women, which for a tech conference, I'm sorry, that's insane. Like that's just wild. And 43% self-identified as being from equity-deserving communities, which is also amazing. And I mean, you were sharing some stories of people coming up to you at the event, and I've so many stories of just from last year's festival of people coming up to me and they go, you know what? I was given a ticket through this community organization, and I was really skeptical. Like I was not sure, and I was a little bit scared coming here. And they've communicated. They're like, I've come. I felt seen. I felt represented. I feel like I'm able to show up as my whole self. And so hearing that, I mean, those are the sorts of things that just make you cry because you're like, this is exactly. Awesome. We're building something that I think is actually quite unique in the tech community.
Yeah, I mean, I echo that. I think it's essential for organizations like ours that, are there to inspire, educate, and all that we assure that there's equality and diversity in our ranks, on our stages, on our panels, on our judges. When we first ran Startupfest, the first edition in 2011, we went looking for a panel of judges and realized very quickly that everybody was white-haired men or balding. So we purposely said, okay, we want to add diversity to this. So we actually went out, we went looking for grandmothers. We said we're going to look for some grandmothers, we're going to look for some teenagers, we're going to look for some, we're going to really diversify this panel of judges. Well, we got 70 nominations of grandmothers. So we ended up by creating a panel of grandmother judges, which at its face maybe came across a little bit tongue-in-cheeky, but the reality is the grandmothers have the best insight into the entrepreneurs. They've chosen actually the most successful entrepreneur to ever come out of Startupfest. But above and beyond assuring the things that we control, like what's happening on stage, our approach was, we were running these $100,000 investment prizes. We'd find 10 angel investors, come together, each put in $10,000, together $100,000. We did that for a few years, and it was just for any entrepreneur at the event. But we found that the winners were typically men. So a group of women angel investors came to us and said, we want to run a woman $100,000 woman prize. In the beginning, it was $50,000, and we said, out of the question, we're going to have a less expensive prize. It's got to be equal. So we created a secondary prize for women, and then we created, Phil Joseph from Rep Matters came to us and said, I want to do something for the Black entrepreneur community. We've done that. We do that now. This will be our 3rd year. We're also trying to do an LGBTQ prize this year. We're pretty close. We've got, I think, 6 or 7 of the 10 investor judges we need. And I've been trying now for 2 years to create a prize for Indigenous entrepreneurs. Not easy. It's not easy to find angel investors from that community. It's not one community. The reality is it's multiple communities. And that's sort of our first step, is finding the prize money, and then we reach out to those communities and make sure they feel welcome, they feel safe, that this is a comfortable place, this is a welcoming place, everybody can have their bit in peace. So I think it's hyper important to tangibly do something where there's an actual opportunity where they can show up and know they've got something for them. And then it becomes real. It's not just come and be part of some larger community that happens to be not looking like you or acting like you. Now it becomes there's something here specifically for you. And we'll always only do that in partnership with leaders of that community. We don't pretend to understand the intricacies of all these communities. So we'll do it in partnership with others.
Thank you for leading and driving that change. I know it's a vulnerable learning journey and something that is so, so important.
Oh, we've made mistakes.
Oh, we have to. Yeah. Everyone has made mistakes, and that's the only way you learn. And I was just going to go there. So we see a lot on social media every single time there's a big raise or a big achievement, and it can really, really be disheartening to those founders that are struggling, and that's the reality every single day. No path looks the same. Could you share one of the challenges or the biggest mistakes that you think you've made and the learning from that you've been able to adopt, apply, and hopefully share with others in the room?
Oh, jeez.
You want an honest answer?
I want an yes. Under the cone of silence with all the folks here today.
Would you like me to?
Yes, you take that because I need to think.
I've made a lot of mistakes. So I actually give a talk to university students. I give a talk once a year, and often I talk about all the mistakes that I make. So I'm comfortable talking about the mistakes. But there came a time where I would say my mistake was believing that we were important, beyond the importance that we were. And that alienated some of the powers that be. And so it's a mistake that I don't regret, because there was a period of time where we received a lot of money from governments to operate Startupfest. Normal, natural. It's the way we make it less expensive and make it more spectacular. But that got ahead of me. And I really took the position that the government was wrong, doing everything wrong, and they still do lots of wrong things. I mean, don't get me wrong. But it was that belief that I really ultimately knew better than others, and that kind of nipped me in the butt and put me back in my place and made me much more humble today. And now I respect far more everybody that we work with and the value that they drive to our event. I see lots of partners in the room that drive a lot of value. So I don't get ahead of myself anymore. I make sure that the others shine over us. One of my mistakes.
Amazing guidance.
What's another one, Phil? I mean, very similar. I'm just, tons of mistakes and learnings. I would go back. I definitely think in our early years, we made a large number of mistakes when it came to our approach to diversity, equity, inclusion with the festival. I think, we're not, and that's when we were not engaging with communities and talking and having real honest conversations. And quite honestly, I think we're more performative than we were actually delivering, if I look back on it. And we were called out and we were held to it, and good on, so we had to do the work. And really be able to, and we're still gonna not get this perfect, and still have a ton of learning in this journey, and that's gonna be continuous. But yes, I think when we in the first few years, I certainly think that we made a number of mistakes. I think that could have been seen as being offensive to some communities, and we've had to really be honest with ourselves and what we were trying to do, and do a lot of the work, and understand and go and talk to different communities. And so I'm hopeful that we've come a long way in that journey, but it's a journey.
And it's one that needs to be shared.
Yeah.
I don't believe there is perfect in anything, and that if we're not pushing hard enough and making those mistakes, then your goals aren't big and bold enough. So thank you for sharing. I know we're coming to the end of our time. When you think about the vision that you have for a unified Canadian tech ecosystem, what do you think of? What would you like to leave with this audience as your vision before we come to one key takeaway?
It definitely takes a community. But it's not just any community. It's not just everybody. It's not large numbers of people. It's the right people getting together with the right intention. I think Canada has that spirit of doing the right things for the right reasons. And so I think we're ahead of the curve on many other countries. Maybe it doesn't serve us very well economically, but at least emotionally it means that we can be together. And so my takeaway, I guess if I want to leave people with something, is seek out the right elements, the people that are doing the things for the right reasons, and ally around that. It's more important to have 10, 50 great partners than it is 1,000 people that care somewhat.
Love it.
I would love to see the continuation of all of these different incredible events, from Startupfest to Elevate to SAS North. There's a ton of them. I want to see them here in 50 years, in 100 years. I think what we aspire to at Elevate is we really want to be building the TIFF for tech. We strive and want to be a place where we can attract people from around the world to come and see how special Canada actually is. And I think that does require more collaboration across the country. I still do, we're a huge landmass, and I do think that we're still, from a regional perspective, a little bit insular, and so I would love to see if there's pathways where we can do more, from coast to coast to coast. I think would be very interesting. Because I think we have such a special and unique country in Canada, and I would love, in 50 years to be able to, when we're thinking about programming or putting people on the main stage, to have a list of, 500 Canadian founders that we want to put on our stage and profile is the goal.
It's almost a disservice to call these events, because they're community building. You're creating community, you're creating the tech ecosystem, and all the events you noted, and all of the networks that work together. One of the things we heard this morning is no one left behind, and I really believe that, but I also think no one that's not engaged. Every single person can demonstrate leadership and take action to drive the unity that we need in our business ecosystem and our tech ecosystem in this country. Give our audience one key takeaway about how you think individuals here today can do that.
Be bold. Take risks. I'm presuming there's a lot of angel investors in the room. You're essential. If you're not there to start these things off, they'll never get to scale. So be bold.
I completely echo that. I think, you know, I've heard so many people say, even, you know, we had Vinod Khosla, who's another amazing speaker, come up and he said the only thing that differentiates a Canadian and American, in his opinion, was their mindset. So let's get out of that, folks.
Amazing. Inspiration, vision, and action, all through collaboration. This is the community, the people in this room, and this is the country. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your expertise.